you've been very excited about this BRICS summit. Why not? Has it lived up to your expectations so far?
Not yet. To answer you directly, George, not yet. In fact, this morning, all of us were following closely the speeches by the five leaders. Concisely, I would say that Putin and Xi basically delivered. They are both extremely aware of the ultra high stakes involved. But from Modi, from Lula, and from Ramaphosa, I would say was not exactly exciting. Modi basically, he had a campaign speech. He was basically saying, look how great I am, everything that I accomplished in India this past year or year and a half or 2 years. Lula was not the Lula that we're used to. He can be an absolutely outstanding speaker when he improvises. He was reading notes, and obviously these notes were not written by him. This is something we can tell right away. Even the way he speaks his Portuguese, you can tell right away that this is not Lula thinking, and this is not Lula arguing, you know. So he was below par considering his very, very high standards as a public speaker. And Ramaphosa was basically taking notes and basically repeating slogans that we are all familiar with, but without elaborating on them. Praising his colleagues for some of the things they said, of course, but they had already discussed that among themselves. So they knew exactly if they were in sync, and they are in sync about most of it, in terms of BRICS as a sort of new G7 or the real G20 from now on, or even an alternative United Nations, or the most important multilateral organization at the moment to organize the inclusion of the global south in international relations, the reach towards Africa, which is very, very important. The Chinese have been saying that for years, in fact. And it's no wonder that Xi Jinping tomorrow is going to have a meeting, only China and 40 or 50 heads of states from all over Africa, and also from the G77, which is the new non-aligned movement, which, by the way, George, the G77 is now G134. There are 134 developing nations on this group, on this non-aligned group, which is basically the cream of the crop of the global south. And they're all interested in BRICS, and they're all interested in discussing with BRICS, and they're all interested to have some of their members as part of BRICS. Which brings us to who is going to be part of BRICS Plus, which is something that they said, the South Africans said today, it's going to be announced tomorrow. There are two conflicting versions coming from the South Africans themselves. They're going to announce tomorrow the procedures for the new members of BRICS Plus, and there's another interpretation that they already have a list. What we managed to know so far is that we are very close, possibly, of a BRICS 10. At the moment, it's BRICS 5. The BRICS 10 will have Argentina. This was Brazil's vote, essentially, among the five. Egypt, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the Emirates. And what does that tell us? This is extremely important. It tells us that the BRICS are more or less getting closer and closer with OPEC plus. This is the energy angle, which in this case, geoeconomically, is even more important than the geopolitical angle. But now we're going to have enormous producers of energy together sitting on the same table, including Russia, of course, Iran, Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Russia, and soon we may have Venezuela as well, and in the second batch, why not Kazakhstan? You know, can you imagine what this means in terms of having between 60 and 70% of the major producers of oil and gas sitting on the same table on a geopolitical level, not only in an organization that is strictly business and energy business like OPEC plus? This is I see this as the real game changer, because what's going to happen afterwards, the second step? They're going to start trading among themselves and with their customers in their local currencies, which is part and parcel of the discussions since yesterday in Johannesburg. How we're going to increase trade in our currencies, all of us 5 BRICS members, and if it's BRICS 10, the same thing will apply. So we're going to have dirham, we're going to have the Iranian rial, all part of this trade connectivity in local currencies. So I would say that the next 24 hours could be a game changer. Let's not have too many high expectations, of course. We all do. But if they dare, first of all, to publish for the whole world to see, okay, the procedures for admission are not very complicated. All the 23 of you who applied, sooner or later will get in. And all 40-something of you who expressed interested, we're open to all of you. So soon we're going to have BRICS 40, BRICS 45. Can you imagine that? It's possible, but not this year, George. I would say that the consolidation
I'm already imagining it.
Living these days. You already imagine it.
I'm already imagining
fantastic.
it with excitement. Pepe Escobar, it's been a privilege for all of us to see and hear you again this evening. Don't be a stranger and
my
stay
pleasure,
in touch.
George. Thank
Pepe
you.
Escobar. Let's hear from my good friend and former colleague Ahmed Kaballo and Clinton Nzala to get an African perspective on what's happening down in South Africa. Gentlemen, very good to see you. I don't know if you heard Pepe's, well, I was going to say excited, but maybe a bit less excited than he had previously been about the BRICS meetings so far. What's your own perspective on it?
The whole African continent is excited about BRICS. And we went to the streets of Johannesburg and we got some vox pops and everyone was excited. Every taxi that we drove in, the taxi drivers expressed their excitement. However, going to the event today and yesterday, the excitement has kind of died down a little bit because although BRICS is definitely needed and it's definitely the future, because of the actions of the South African president, Cyril Ramaphosa, to not allow Putin, to disinvite Putin from attending in person, I think it's put a bit of a downer on the whole event. Today, kind of Putin, it seemed like he took a bit of a shot at Ramaphosa. He said that, Russia will be hosting the next BRICS and Russia will make sure that it's independent and not, subject to external pressures. I'm not sure if he worded it exactly like that, but that was the gist. And it definitely felt like a dig. Then Ramaphosa said something back, mentioned the war in Ukraine, and then said something like, as you said that you want this to end, the you said part of it felt a bit targeted and telling in the tone. And then we have President Modi, who seems to want to have one foot in the West's camp and one foot in BRICS's camp. In his speech today, I think he mentioned the G20 in positive terms and then mentioned BRICS. And it's like, why are you mentioning G20 at a BRICS summit? I'm sure none of the G20 members are mentioning BRICS when they meet. So yeah, there was positive comments from President Lula. The Chinese are obviously always reserved in their assessments, and Putin was, no holds back bars, and was denouncing the West for, causing global insecurity through its sanction regime, through its wars, through its regime change program. But I just feel like there's two members, South Africa and India, that might potentially be letting the slide down.
Is that how you saw it, Clinton? It certainly seemed also to be the view of Pepe Escobar. Is that how you two saw it?
I definitely agree. I think the best I can say, it has been lukewarm. Like a lot of people expected decisive statements, decisive postures from the leaders of the BRICS nations involved. Then I think for the past couple of months or weeks leading to the BRICS summit, I think President Ramaphosa has failed to show a backbone. Today we are having 4 leaders at the summit against expectations of having 5 leaders. And many people, they think this is a result of President Ramaphosa failing to stand up to the bullying tactics of the West. He failed to make it clear to say, as a host nation, all leaders of BRICS that were supposed to be in Johannesburg were going to travel to Johannesburg. So at one time, he had shown like he was willing to take a stand. He was willing to have President Putin here, safe and secure. Then at one moment, he seemed to backtrack. So all this kind of affected, I think it has affected the mood of the summit. A lot of people, BRICS is seen as an alternative. It's supposed to be a group of people who cannot be swayed around by some Western bullying or whatever, but President Ramaphosa has failed to show that. So generally, the whole conference is very lukewarm. And like Ahmed pointed out to say, I was shocked when we had Prime Minister Modi talking about how India is going to help the African Union to get a seat in the G20. Like at a BRICS summit, why are you going to be talking about the G20? It's like totally unrelated. And I think that the reason why we've got groupings like BRICS is because of members of the Global South seeing that groups like G20 were not giving them the voice that they wanted. At the best, those were reduced to just talk shops. And if they are ever invited, sometimes they do send out token invitations to certain countries from the Global South. But we know to say those countries there are not taken seriously. They are just treated like bridesmaids or escorting some people to their marital bliss. So I think that then organizations like BRICS, at least they gave the Global South a voice. And it's a reason why right now, a lot of countries from the Global South have shown interest to join BRICS because they think that it's a platform where their aspirations and their developmental agendas, their political agendas are going to be heard. They are going to have a voice. And like places like where I've said G20, which are merely beauty pageants that only help to try to sell capitalism to the Global South.
Ahmed, I'm so old, I knew a different Cyril Ramaphosa and a different ANC for that matter. But whenever I make that point, people refer me to a book called The Economic Hitman. And they imply that the economic hitmen have got to Cyril and to the ANC, and that they're not actually free agents to be what perhaps they would like to be, certainly what they would once have liked to be. Is that just a cop-out, or is there anything in that?
Well, Cyril Ramaphosa is the second richest black man in South Africa. He's a billionaire. Now, he has millions, maybe billions in offshore accounts, which means there's clearly a conflict of interest. South Africa is the most unequal country in the world at the moment. Is a billionaire president the type to put in policies that are really going to empower the masses and redistribute the wealth, which was what the Freedom Charter and the struggle for liberation was all about? But that being said, I'm very critical of the ANC, and I think some of the points are valid, but there is two wings of the ANC, and Ramaphosa clearly represents the moderate wing. If we look back to President Zuma, who again I'm not a big fan of, but if we look back to when the West put pressure on President Zuma with regard to the ICC arrest warrant of Omar al-Bashir, he says, do what you want to me. Bashir's coming, and that's that. Now, me, my family, we oppose the Bashir regime, but we think it's a principled position because the ICC, I think it was nicknamed by the Gaddafi, the International Caucasian Court, because it only goes after African leaders. It really loses all credibility when you look at the people that it goes after. So I'm not one of these Sudanese people that believes Bashir should be in the ICC, not because he's not a war criminal, because I just don't believe in the institution. I believe that, if you're going to try someone in a court that has no legitimacy on the continent, it doesn't mean anything. It just looks like a Western instrument to go after African leaders. But yeah, when we spoke to taxi drivers, this is the best way to get the feel of what people are saying on the ground. All of the taxi drivers feel that Ramaphosa has basically lost his backbone. And it's not just that he disinvited Putin. If we think back, he did much worse than that. He made up this fake quote that there's no way the Russians ever said about, if you dare arrest Putin, it will be a declaration of war. Now, because it was such a provocative thing to misquote an ally about, the Russians had to come back and say, we never said that. But it does go without saying that if you were to arrest any head of state, it would be a declaration of war. So I think it wasn't just, disinviting him. I think it was the comments afterwards that showed that he's not a reliable partner and maybe not, the one that should be leading the African charge in the BRICS.
Clinton, what significance for Africa do you see in the death of Prigozhin and his deputy in the plane crash in Moscow, outside Moscow today? Pepe's view was that it will make no difference. Russia will play the same role in Sahelian Africa as it would have done if these events had not happened. Do you have any views on that, any apprehensions about that?
I think it all depends on how, we not say Wagner has got quite a significant presence in the Central African Republic and the Sahel, where they've played a decisive role in ensuring that some norms and some stability returns to the region. They've helped to turn the tide against attacks from insurgent groups in those regions. So, but after I don't know if I would call it an insurrection that we saw a few months ago, I think there were some configurations that were done regarding how the Wagner Group operates in those regions. So I think due to those configurations, yes, of course, the impact is going to be there, but I feel to say it will be minimal. It will not be one that would disrupt the ongoing operations that Wagner has in the region, or maybe even, I don't think it will affect the security arrangements that are going there. It's a sad thing whenever someone dies, and actually it's very sad, but I think that the operations will continue in their current form.
Ahmed, last word to you, and changing the subject necessarily short of time. The big struggle in Nigeria must reach a conclusion sometime soon in the courts. The question of whether or not the current president of Nigeria was actually legally entitled to be on the ballot paper. And I have somewhat unexpectedly emerged as someone in that mix. It's a strange thing that an African president is in court in Illinois trying to stop his university from releasing a copy of his academic results. One can only assume that they don't make for good reading. What's your take on that?
It is strange unless you understand the ins and outs of US imperialism. He is the perfect candidate to do their bidding, because it makes no sense a country like Nigeria that says one of the biggest tribes in Nigeria with the people of Niger shares one of the biggest land borders, shares a lot of culture, dress, especially between the north, to be attacking their neighbor over a coup in a continent that has dozens of coups that happen all the time, and Nigeria doesn't do anything. So, they need to have somebody that has this threat looming over them that we will, charge you for this, or we can take your money away from you, or we can expose you. And that's what gets them to do their bidding. It's part of the book that you mentioned previously, The Economic Hitman. This is, I don't know what page it is in the CIA handbook, but it's definitely in there.